6 weeks of quarantine and counting. How y'all doing? Y'all holding up alright? Well, if you're absolutely dying of boredom, I got a movie for you to watch. It's another one of my all-time favorite movies, and this is the movie that proves that I can love more than, the fun action movies or animated movies. I mean, this movie's still fun, but in a different way than the movies I usually like. The Artist. So The Artist is, hold on to your hats, a silent film that came out in 2011. Believe it, because it's true. And it was a limited release too. Not too many people have seen this movie. I actually got to see this movie on the big screen. I went to an award screening of it. Award season was coming around, and so they have screenings in downtown Hollywood of the movies that are up for Oscars and stuff. And I went to one of those award screenings. It's one of the perks of being an Angelino and knowing someone in the business with connections. And it's true, this movie, for the most part, is a completely silent film. The dialogue between the characters is not audible. There are intertitles, the dialogue cards, like the old school movies of the 1920s. The movie's entirely in black and white. It's in 4:3 aspect ratio. This movie is straight up a love letter to the Hollywood movie making process of old. And the funny thing is, it was made by mostly French people, believe it or not. The director, Michel Hazanavicius, he's French. The composer, Ludovic Bourse, he's French. The two lead actors, Jean Dujardin and Berenice Bejo, they're French. I just find that very interesting. So the story of The Artist begins in 1927. Our main character is George Valentine. He's a silent film movie star. He's living it up. He's super famous. He's narcissistic. He's like Gene Kelly. One day after his big movie premiere, he meets aspiring young starlet, Peppy Miller. She's just getting into the acting business. And this is around the time when silent pictures were starting to become out of fashion, and talking pictures, movies with audible dialogue, started rising in popularity. This movie is about how that affects both of our actors. See, George Valentine, being the narcissistic movie star that he is, he learns about talking pictures and he's like, this is a joke. This is never gonna last. I'm gonna stick with what I know, which is silent movies. Whereas Peppy Miller decides to go with the flow. She starts doing talking pictures, and as it turns out, she rises in stardom while George Valentine sinks. If the plot sounds kind of familiar, it's because this is not the first movie to have that plot. I do compare this movie to Singin' in the Rain a lot in my head, because it too is about the arrival of talking pictures and its effect on actors in the business at the time. But this movie just does it a little more sincerely, if I may. I mean, the two main characters, you root for them both, because they're both likable people. Even George Valentine in the beginning, because he's narcissistic, but he's not a terrible person. He's narcissistic in that Tony Stark kind of way, where he's narcissistic, but he's still likable. So you like him from the beginning, so when you see him decline into such distress, you feel really bad for him. There was a big stock market crash in 1929. That had a big effect on him. He's not making any money because he wants to keep doing silent pictures, an art form that's going out of style. No one wants to see silent movies anymore because movies are talking now. So George Valentine is forced to make compromises. It's depressing to watch, and that might be a little bit of a spoiler. I am not gonna spoil anything because odds are you haven't seen this movie yet, so you gotta go watch it. Alright, I kind of dug myself into a hole there. Moving on. I will say the cast of this movie is not entirely French. John Goodman's in this movie. He's one of my favorite actors working today. In this movie, he plays Al Zimmer. He's the big guy in charge of the movie studio. And you can tell he cares about the art of movie making. But of course, a big part of that is how much money are we gonna make? That's why we're moving into talking pictures, because they make money. There's also a dog in this movie. Dude, the dog. Cutest little Parson Russell Terrier you've ever seen. And probably the most well-trained dog I've ever seen in a movie. Seriously, just watch it. You'll know what I'm talking about. In the movie, the dog is George's pet, and you just love the moments with the dog, which is also part of what makes George so likable, is that he has a dog, and a really cute, well-trained one at that. Now, this movie does a really good job at just taking you back to the time period. I mean, not just in the fact that it's black and white and 4:3 aspect ratio, but that does help. But you see the aesthetic of everything, you see the Hollywood Land sign on the mountain. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Hollywood used to be called Hollywood Land way back in the day. That's what it was called. The movie was shot entirely in Hollywood. They shot in movie theaters, in big houses, studio backlots, the Warner Brothers backlot. The studio tours there are awesome, by the way. But I mean, the movie wouldn't work as well if it was shot anywhere else. It just puts you right there in that time period. And of course, one of the biggest aspects of this film is the score. This score was written by Ludovic Bourse, who I just learned didn't really have any formal training in composing prior to this movie. I mean, he knew how to read sheet music, but that was it. When he got this movie, he studied old school jazz and pretty much taught himself how to write music. And he won the Oscar for it, and several other awards, I imagine. Because the score is absolutely awesome. I mean, of course, it's a silent film, so the composer's gonna have a lot of room to shine. That first scene where George Valentine is on stage just soaking in all the applause. It's super catchy, it also sucks you right into the time period, but also when the score wants to be dramatic and dark, it is dramatic and dark. I mean, that's what silent movies are all about, is conveying emotion without audible dialogue. Because yeah, not every single line spoken by a character in this movie is made into an intertitle, but you can tell what the characters are trying to convey emotionally. In the words of Gloria Swanson, they didn't need words, they had faces, and it's just brilliant. This entire film, like I said, is a love letter to the old school movie making process, and it won all sorts of awards. It won 5 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. Now, of course, I don't see the Academy as, you know, the end-all be-all of what movies are good and what movies are not. Like, Shape of Water also won Best Picture, but I just thought it was okay. But this time, I absolutely agree with the Academy. It was the best movie of 2011. The other 4 Oscars it won were Best Director, Best Lead Actor, Jean Dujardin as George Valentine, Best Costume Design, and Best Score. And it completely deserved all of them, especially that score. And Best Picture. The unfortunate thing is that these days it's hard to find. It's not streaming anywhere, so you'd have to buy it online from somewhere. Or you could try finding the Blu-ray. This is actually really cool. This opens up. Check it out. Whoop! Look at that. Pretty. So yeah, even though this movie might be hard to find these days, believe me, it is worth it to seek it out. I can't imagine anyone not liking this movie. At the very least, you'll be like, alright, it was good at what it was trying to do. And now at this point, I have made videos about all my favorite movies, except for Lord of the Rings. I'm not sure when I'm gonna do that one, but The Artist is always gonna be up there in my list. Great writing, great characters, great aesthetic, great music. I can't watch this movie without tearing up at least once, cause some of the scenes, man, they get real emotional and they get to you. It's one of those movies where you gotta put in a good amount of time after you watch it before you watch it again. Cause if you watch it too many times in succession, the emotion's gonna drain out of it. Like, I just watched it last night, now I'm gonna wait at least a few more months, if not till the end of the year before I watch it again. Because that way I can be like, oh yeah, the emotions, there it is again. Again, it is absolutely worth it to seek it out. Honestly, go do it. It will not be a waste of your money, I promise. So The Artist, have you seen it? What do you think about it? And do you have a favorite silent film? If you do, what is it? Whatever you think, go ahead and leave a comment. And don't forget to subscribe.